Hi, I'm Pat Kiernan. This is Pat's Papers. We go through the nation's newspapers every weekday morning to thin it out, to cut through the clutter, to give you some of what we think is most relevant for you to read in the morning. Here's some of what we found for you today. The Washington Post pounces on President Barack Obama's trouble with his nominees and their taxes. Two nominees dropped out yesterday, most notably former Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle. The Post calls this the first major setback in the Obama presidency. This, of course, is huge news on Daschle's home turf in South Dakota. The Aberdeen American News has Daschle on its front page, along with reaction from colleagues. The Argus Leader in Sioux Falls notes the decision brought disappointment but understanding from South Dakotans. To illustrate this story, many of the papers have grabbed onto a photo that is not directly related to the story. It shows Barack Obama in a classroom at a charter school. He looked like his mind was elsewhere. The headline in the New York Post is "Oh So Glum." It's on the front page of USA Today, just below the photo of all those people lining up for the free breakfast that Denny's promised during the Super Bowl. The headline in the New York Times is "Daschle ends bid for post, Obama concedes mistake." The Times story says it was the rockiest day yet for the new White House. There is a related story in the business section of the Times from Your Money columnist Ron Lieber, who has some advice for you about how to avoid these sorts of tax issues that have tripped up these public officials. One simple bit of advice is don't just think about your taxes in March and April. If you do your tax accounting and you're planning year-round, you are less likely to get backed into a corner or simply forget about something. Okay, back to the free breakfast now. You can call it a publicity grand slam. The Omaha World Herald's calling it a stunner that had other restaurants wondering whether the giveaway would actually pay off. I was skeptical, but it turned out to be a totally legit offer from Denny's. They said in the Super Bowl ad that they were giving out free grand slam breakfast platters yesterday. And there really wasn't any fine print. The company gave away about 2 million breakfasts nationally. The Chicago Tribune says ousted Governor Rod Blagojevich was a walking punchline on The Late Show with David Letterman last night. The best exchange highlighted on page 1 of the newspaper. Blagojevich said, "I've been wanting to be on your show in the worst way for the longest time." Letterman's quick reply was, "You're on in the worst way, believe me." A gut-churning look at the car business in the Detroit News. New sales lows in January. U.S. auto sales have suffered 15 consecutive months of declines. From Texas, the Dallas Morning News, a switch on the usual headlines about Mexico. Usually we hear about the growth of Spanish in border states in the U.S. But on the Mexican side, the state of Tamaulipas has declared it is bilingual, the first Mexican state giving official recognition to both Spanish and English. The government of Kyrgyzstan says it is ending its deal to host a U.S. airbase, a critical deal for military movement to Afghanistan. As reported in the LA Times, this seems to be as much a rent dispute as anything to do with the politics of the war. The Pentagon thinks it might just be a negotiating tactic. Iran has launched a satellite. Coverage of that story in the New York Times says this satellite launch capability means Iran is one of 9 countries with that ability. The fear in this case, though, is that the same rocket could be modified to carry a nuclear weapon. On the op-ed pages of the New York Times, a good case for a refresher in your first aid course, author Joan Nathan tells how she was saved by celebrity chef Tom Colicchio. She was choking, the popular chef stepped in and did the Heimlich maneuver. So how did James Bond ruin the martini? Today's Washington Post examines the evolution of the world-famous cocktail. The 50-50 martini is gaining popularity, particularly with a younger generation. It is an equal mix of gin and vermouth. Get ready for color. The personal journal section of the Wall Street Journal says men's fashion is shifting to bright color for spring. The story says think pink and orange, lilac, and cobalt blue. Finally, my favorite story of the day is the story of the lost book. U.S. Airways pilot Chesley Sullenberger has informed his local library that he can't return the book he borrowed because it's at the bottom of the Hudson River. The Danville, California library will not reveal the name of the book for privacy reasons, but says it has replaced the book with no charge to the pilot, and it has also waived any overdue fee. And those are just some of the headlines this morning. Thanks for joining us for Pat's Papers. Go to patspapers.com, scroll down on the main page, and you will see links to the individual newspapers where these stories were published. You can read them for yourself there and read more from any one of those newspapers.